Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Double Reward. The Prophet ﷺ said that the person who reads the Qur'an masterly, the person who reads it with good command and for whom it's easy, he is like the noble angels of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the one who reads the Qur'an with difficulty, for him there is double reward. So the Prophet ﷺ is talking about two different kinds of people. One who has command over the Qur'an. He knows how to pronounce the letters, he understands it, he has mastery over it. So what about this person? The Prophet ﷺ says that he's like the noble angels of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the angels that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves. This is an extremely high position and high station for somebody who masters the Qur'an. But what about somebody who's just starting out? What about somebody who has difficulty in reading the Qur'an? What about somebody for whom it's a struggle? The Prophet says, for him there is double reward. And that's why we named this program Double Reward. The purpose of this program is to help you to move from being like the first person, insha'Allah, to being like the person who has mastery over the Qur'an. But that's a tall order, and it's going to take a lot of work. And the first place to begin is with learning tajweed, or the rules of pronunciation. That's the very beginning. And that's what we're going to do, inshallah, in this program. We're going to, inshallah, read together the Qur'an so that you can listen and repeat after. Another thing we're going to do is, after we read, we're going to talk about a particular rule. We're going to explain it, give rules and drills, and give you a chance to repeat at home so that you can learn these rules. Now you may be thinking to yourself, well, you know, I wasn't born as an Arabic speaker. I don't really know Arabic that well. Or you might be thinking to yourself, I'm very old. I'm 40 years old, or I'm 45 years old. I can't memorize the Qur'an. I can't learn it. I can't be a master at reading the Qur'an. And what I'm telling you is that if you're sincere and you ask Allah, even though you don't speak English, you don't speak Arabic, or even though you're old, or even though whatever it is that you think is holding you back, you can still become a master at reading the Qur'an. But it's going to be hard, and it's going to be a challenge. But inshallah we can do it together, me and you. But I have a surprise for you. We're not going to be alone. It'll be me, you, and inshallah we have participants. Pay attention to my interaction with them. See what kind of mistakes they're making. See how they're pronouncing, and try as much as you can to repeat at home. The other surprise I have for you is that you don't have to be alone at home either. If you're a mother or a father, bring your children. If you're a spouse, bring your husband or your wife. Bring your friends and bring your relatives. Bring everybody along so that all of us together can get on this journey and ride toward being masters at reading the Qur'an. Now, the Prophet ﷺ says that when you read a letter of the Qur'an, you get 10 rewards. Let me give you an example. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alif Lam Mim. That word, we just got 30 rewards for that. We got a reward for the first letter, Alif, Lam, Mim. Now imagine if you're reading a whole verse. How many rewards are you going to get? What about a whole surah? What about the whole Qur'an? So as you can see, Allah has so much reward stored for you if you sit down and you say, I can, and I have hope that inshallah I will succeed at memorizing the Qur'an. So before we begin our program, we want to introduce our fellow travelers or introduce our fellow participants who are going to be sharing along in our experience. How are you guys? Are you all ready?
Yes.
Osama, why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm 13 and I come from Chicago.
MashaAllah. Do you consider yourself a beginner at learning the Qur'an, or an intermediate or an advanced person?
I consider myself a beginner.
MashaAllah. Okay. Firdaus?
Yeah, I'm from Singapore, and then my age is 24.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm considering myself as intermediate.
Okay, inshallah you'll be able to advance and you'll become higher and higher and higher.
Inshallah.
And mashallah, you have a very wonderful name, Firdaus, which means paradise.
Thank you.
Ahmed, why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm 16 and I'm also from Chicago and I'm a beginner.
MashaAllah. Feiruz?
I'm 20, I'm from Singapore and I consider myself in the intermediate level.
Okay. Inshallah, all of us together, you guys and also our participants at home, inshallah we're going to make, inshallah, good progress.
Sure.
Now, but the very important thing here that we have to look at is our intention. Okay? Each one of you and you at home also have to think about, well, why am I doing this? And that brings us to another important point, and we're going to tell a story. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first began the da'wah, all of the believers were in Mecca. Then, as the years progressed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted the believers to make hijrah, to travel from Mecca to Medina. Now, this was a very hard thing. The believers were going to leave their belongings. They were going to leave their business. They were going to leave all of the things that they knew, the sky that they had lived under for so many years, the earth and the land that they had become familiar with as children, as boys and as girls. They were going to leave all of that and go to Medina in obedience to Allah and in obedience to the Messenger. And Allah gave them a lot of rewards. But there was one man, when it came time to leave, he didn't go. And then finally, when he did go, he didn't go to obey the Prophet or for the pleasure of Allah. He went because he wanted to marry a lady. So then when he arrived at Medina, they were asking him, or the issue came up of why did he travel or why did he make hijrah? And he seemed to suggest that it was to obey Allah and it was to obey the Messenger. So when the Prophet heard about this, he taught us a very, very important lesson. That when you begin something, you have to begin at the beginning with a good intention and stating the clear purpose. My purpose is to please Allah and to obey the Messenger from the very beginning. It's not as good for you to come at the end and say, okay, well, this was my intention. So he taught us something and he said, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ وَإِنَّمَا لِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مَا نَوَى. That Allah gives you reward for your actions depending on why you did them and what your intention was. And that Allah gives you the reward for whatever your intention was. Then the Prophet said, فَمَنْ كَانَتْ هِجْرَتُهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ فَهِجْرَتُهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. And so, whoever made hijrah for the sake of Allah and to obey the Messenger of Allah, then Allah will give him reward for this intention. وَمَنْ كَانَتْ هِجْرَتُهُ لِدُنْيَا يُصِيبُهَا أَوْ امْرَأَةٍ يَنْكِحُهَا فَهِجْرَتُهُ إِلَى مَا هَاجَرَ إِلَيْهِ. But he who made hijrah for a worldly gain or to marry a woman, then Allah will give him the reward for the intention that he set out with at the very beginning. But, it's hard when you're starting something out to ask yourself, why am I doing this? And to get your intention right. But something that you can do to help you is, you can get in the habit of, before starting something, you can make dua. And you can ask Allah to bless you, to bless what you're doing, and to make what you're doing for His sake. And inshallah that will help you make an internal change.